Seriously. Imam Sahib, a brief introduction to begin with.
Yes, so today we have representation from 5 different countries.
MashaAllah.
First of all, Al-Hajj Hassan Sumono, Amir of Nigeria.
Right.
And next is Badruddin Jafar Sahib. He is Secretary Tabligh from South Africa. Next,
when did you arrive?
Day before yesterday, in the evening.
Fine, all right. And Naib Amir of Tanzania.
Naib Amir of Tanzania.
You know, the word Tanzania is pronounced by some here as Tanzania. And as I visited Tanzania, they used to pronounce it as Tanzania. Which one is the right one?
Tanzania.
Huh?
Tanzania.
Tanzania. That's right. So I always try to correct them, but they wouldn't listen. They will know better. Please.
And next, Mr. Abdul Rahim. He lives in UK, but he's originally from Ghana.
From Ghana.
Ardo Sahib's son.
Of course I know.
Yes.
Very well.
And Mr. Kaleem Edward from UK. Yes.
Shall we begin with?
Yes, Amir Sahib is going to ask
Nigeria.
Nigeria. First question.
My first question is, apart from Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaats worldwide, that its members are aware of the plot against Islam, the other sects in Islam don't appear to be aware. What should our Jamaat do to make the world Muslim Ummah aware of this persistent danger?
They are aware of the danger, but individually, not collectively. And sometimes also they speak of dangers to the Ummah in various sects from their specific vantage point. They see dangers as quite different from what we see as dangers. Like for instance, a large number of Wahhabis, Deobandis and so on, the only danger to Islam, as they say, is from Ahmadiyya Jamaat.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah.
Imagine, wasting all their energy and all the attention of the Ummah in the direction of Ahmadiyya Jamaat, wasting in the sense that they can't do anything to stop our progress. Wasting in the sense as well that they should have directed their attention to the real dangers which are confronted by Islam from Christianity, from Judaism, from Hinduism, from Buddhism, from all the philosophies which are alive and alert, except for Islam, which is alert in a very different way, in a non-productive way, in a suicidal way. It only, whenever they speak of other dangers, the mullahs or the clergy, they speak of dangers from the political might of the non-Muslims, which is just an imaginary thing, and a thing anyway of which they have no control, they have no countermeasures available to them to obviate the dangers if they come from the non-Muslim worlds to the Muslim states. Now, even if their exaggerated concept of such dangers is right, such dangers cannot be spoken of as dangers to Islam. They are dangers to the political entity of certain Muslims. And such dangers are not commonly shared by all the Muslim states, and they also view the rest of the world from their vantage point differently. Some who are considered to be the most dangerous to the interest of Muslim Ummah by some mullahs or Muslim clergy are considered by them to be their saviors, the only hope for their survival. So change the vantage point and the view will appear differently. What can you do to bring about a single observational platform? Unless you build that, it's impossible for you to create the right-minded awareness among the Muslims to the real dangers which they confront. And that can only happen if they begin to see from the platform built by the Imam of the time, Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam. Unless an Imam is directly appointed by God, no one has the potential to lead the Ummah at a time when the differences split them apart. And this exactly is the prophecy of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, both with regards to the Messiah and the Mahdi, that he will sit on the chair of judgment and decide which one of the warring factions of the Muslims is right where. So, Hakaman Adalan is the one attribute of the Imam Mahdi, which is, and also the attribute of Messiah, of the Messiah, promised Messiah, which has been prophesied by Hazrat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam repeatedly, with such emphasis that nobody, no reader of hadith can ever miss this. Now, what is the capacity of the Imam Mahdi or Messiah to sit on the seat of judgment, giving verdicts regarding the split of the Ummah itself? And that shows that he is neutral and his chair lies above and beyond the sectarial reach. So, that also means that his verdict will not be from the vantage point of any single sect. In parts, he will declare one sect to be on the right, in parts, another sect to be the right, and so on. He will stick to truth of Islam and not to the sectarian visions of Islam. Now, without this, no other solution is conceivable, because this is the most logical conclusion one can draw from the study of the situation as prevails. But apart from that, it is the only conclusion drawn by Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. The only ray of hope of which he speaks, that at the time of split, when the Ummah is divided into 72 sects and so on, they can only be united in doctrines and in beliefs by the advent of Hazrat, he didn't say Hazrat, but by the advent of the Messiah, the promised Messiah, or the Imam Mahdi. So that is my answer, you know. Right. Please.
Huzur has on many occasions and always spoken to about tabligh, and actually my question is specifically to South African. If Huzur permits me to elaborate on it, what's actually the difference, how do we approach them? That is actually my question. If Huzur permits me, then I can.
See, you are coming from a country which I have not yet visited, and you want me to advise you on to what approach watching the situation from so close. Why don't you abide by the advice I have been rendering throughout to all the Jamaats of the world, that follow the dictates of the Quran and emphasize the role of hikmah, wisdom in preaching. And the hikmah requires that you study the situation in a detached way, without being emotionally involved in it, and scan the whole front which you want to win for the sake of Islam, and find out the loopholes from which you can enter. Like a great general, you know, when he scans the frontier of the war, he always looks for such passages, openings, through which he can successfully make his entry with the least bloodshed. Now, this exactly is the spiritual advice of the Quran regarding the spiritual fight. The bloodshed there means unnecessary quarrels and things, The Holy Quran says, Udu ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati. That's the first thing. Study with wisdom, whatever is the best approach. Here it doesn't say start with the Quran. Fantastic, isn't it? You should expect normally, if it was a man-made book, he should have spoken of start with the arguments of the Quran. No, no such thing. Not in the Quran. It says, Uddu ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati. Call to the path of your Lord with wisdom. And moreover, it doesn't say Uddu ila sabili al-Islami. Another very important feature to be noted. Call towards the path of your Lord, God. So, He is the only common point in whom mankind can be interested as such, whatever their religious denomination. So, call to the commonality, and the commonality of religion, the central fundamental commonality is God. So, first of all, call mankind to God, and there you can see every people, whichever religion they belong to, having drifted away so much from God and godliness that we have a lot of ground to cover. So, start preaching the good values of godliness and do it with such wisdom as you present yourself as a model of godliness. This also has been mentioned in the Quran very clearly, but in another verse. So, I am combining both. You must be a good model of godliness before you begin to invite people to God. And once you do that, then you become a source of attraction and gravitation, which can become irresistible if you grow more powerful in your godly expressions and godly attributes. This is what is done by all the prophets of Allah. This is the secret of their ultimate success. They call towards God. That means they are not interested in their personal aggrandizement or collecting number around them, because number they have abandoned. It is their game begins with the abandonment of all the number which could have been accrued by them if they had followed the popular views. If they had advocated the popular views of the commoners, they would attract far more following, far greater following than any religious leader of the time. But they are not interested. They raise a voice which is most unpopular, but potentially it is the only voice which is capable of emerging as the dominant voice later on. Call towards God. And when they do it, as we read the history of the Holy Quran, they are abandoned in the beginning, but then people begin to, come ones in twos, in threes, until the armies of people march into their faith. So, this is what happens everywhere. This is the secret of success in preaching. Call towards God, and deep inside people know they are not godly. That gives you another advantage. I have been speaking to Americans and Canadians during my tour, and this is exactly what I did there. And they were absolutely disarmed. No barriers were created by Christians or the Jews or non-believers. They knew I was talking truth. So, this is the most essential part of wisdom to which the Holy Quran draws our attention. Talk of God and godliness and call people to this. Then, after this what? Arguments? No. Wal mu'izatil hasanati. When your wisdom seems to have reached the end of its tether and still no response, then speak of, preach them with mu'iza hasana. Mu'iza hasana is a an admonishment which in itself has a quality of beauty and attraction, and which also has a sense of sorrow and pathos. When the prophets hear themselves rejected, then they say, "O our people, we are doing it for your sake. If you do not listen to us, you will be destroyed. We are warning you, not with any sense of vengeance, but with a deep sense of personal involvement in your goodness." So that moiza, which comes from heart and it's so potent with this power of sincerity, begins to win territories which were refused to you earlier. But if moiza hasana ultimately fails, then you don't have to start a war, the enemy will. Because after that, a stage is reached when they know that you are gaining some of their territories, and they know that people are beginning to join you. Then their leadership is threatened. Then they rise to the crescendo of their hostilities and begin to oppose you by hook and crook, and then mujadala begins, a fight between the two. This is the third stage of your conflict with the enemy. Then the Holy Quran says they will adopt every evil to oppose you. You stick to goodness. That will be the trial of your patience and the trial of your inner truth. If really what motivated you was their love, their response of hatred will not destroy your inner intentions, will not mutilate your love for mankind. Like even the ugly responses of some children cannot change the character of mother's love. She goes on loving. So that is the trial of which the Holy Quran speaks, Jadilhum billati hi asan. Of course, you have to argue against arguments, but do it in the best of manner. As Masih Maud has advised, गालियाँ सुन के दुआ देता हूँ इन लोगों को. When I hear abuses, I pray for them. A word of kindness should be the response. But the Holy Quran is a book of human psychology as well. It also mentions elsewhere that there are people who cannot have that high threshold of patience which could withstand the pressures. And if they give in, the advice is they should not transgress to a point where they exceed their revenge beyond what they have been transgressed against. The level of cruelty perpetrated against them should never be crossed in response. If you observe this strict principle, then the Holy Quran says Allah will not have any objection against you by way of condemnation. Humans have their right to take their revenge, but the limited revenge based on absolute justice. But if it is avoidable, the Holy Quran says that is the secret, the secret to success. If you avoid it, stick to hasana against sayyi'ah, goodness against evil. Then you know what happens. The verdict of the Quran in this situation is the ultimate test of your success would be that those who were your bloodthirsty enemies, they would become friends who shower their blood on you for your sake, not only to save you, they will offer their lives. So this is the ultimate goal of preaching, to convert the attitudes of people with these goodly attributes and pass the final examination, which is this: have you converted the society of a society based on hostility to a society based on love, not only for your message but for you as well. So, this is a very clearly charted out program for preaching by the Holy Quran, and I have been speaking on this subject repeatedly. You have not begun where you should begin as yet. The main problem with South Africa has long been that instead of Jadil whom billati hai asan, the enemy, they have been fighting each other billati hai lesa be asan. They have been having fights within, not based on the principle of then return then respond to your enemies with the best. They have been fighting with each other, not always with the best. You know, for instance, they have been indulging in attributing to each other's intentions of which they had no knowledge. Intentions based on just their own ill will. The result has been that they have been fighting and multiplying their so-called causes of grievance imaginatively within themselves. You know, just all right, that he must have done something to belittle us, to dishonor us and do this and that, and the ladies get involved and the men get involved, and an infight begins which destroys whatever potential you have to win the task of emerging as dominant in your society. But hopefully that past is buried. Hopefully, I say. But half of the Jamaat was buried along with that past. Because I had to take the final decision of operation. So, all right, if you can't coexist, that part which I thought was more to be blamed, I said, all right, leave the Jamaat, forget us. At what cost? Imagine. But the signs of life are not yet appearing. This is my dilemma and my concern, and I am glad that you came and you have raised this very question. That Jamaat is a Jamaat of strange paradoxes. They are absolutely beautifully well organized now. They are very conscientious workers in discharging their internal responsibilities by way of being Secretary Mal, Secretary Talim, Secretary this. They keep immaculate records, and they have computerized systems of work. But when it comes to production, it does not exist. Now, what is the purpose of a well-organized, well-oiled machinery if it cannot produce what it is made to produce? You can go to any industry here in England and find out what is the input as against the output. They will tell you, yes, this is the input, this is the output, and so we are so happy. But if the input and output is exactly equal and there is no gain whatsoever on the other end, then it is useless, sheer waste of energy, just merely noise, no more. So, these are the facts which you must recognize and join your heads together and scan the whole horizon of South Africa, which is so big that it is bigger than Europe. See, South Africa is bigger than Europe. It's a fantastic countries, or most parts of Europe, if not entirely. You know, again, consult some atlas and you will learn the truth of what I am telling you. It's an amazing statement, but this is true. and they have all the potentials, even more potentials than Europe has in many ways. And this is the territory which you should win for Islam, because no one else would if you don't. And do it with a sense of panic. You have lost time so much that you get, first of all, gain that realization of how much time you have lost for generations and how much distance is to be covered. And then do it in the only manner which makes it possible to bring about a revolution in countries that start fixing targets for yourself and making a resolve that will double this target at least during the next year. In the beginning, the progress may appear to be slow, but when the doubling begins, within 2 or 3 steps, fantastic results appear. Like you will learn this on this Jalsa Salana. Countries which remain in the confined area of say 1,000 per year, or a few hundred 1 year, or 2,000 per year. A continent, Africa, which was confined, including South Africa, to the figures of a few thousand, 4,000 or 5,000. Imagine, has crossed the 1 million barrier within the last 2-3 years. Fantastic things have happened, only because they took my advice seriously and loyally. Whatever I told them, they started working. And because my instruction was based on the Quran and not on myself, so it had to be productive, and this is it. So when you have seen this in action in North Africa, in West Africa, in East Africa, why should God be the enemy of South Africa alone? See? Next, please.
In my country, Christians are always asking questions.
Yes.
They say, according to the Holy Quran, liquor is prohibited. Whereas in the
What
same
is forbidden?
liquor
Liquor. Achha, liquor.
is prohibited. Whereas in the same book, the same Quran, people they will be served with liquor in heaven.
With liquor in?
In heaven.
But
Heaven.
what liquor is that?
This is the-
La ghalun fiha wala tasima. The liquor is defined. It says a liquor which will not intoxicate. So what sort of liquor you are talking about?
because they take it literally.
The hurmat of liquor, the reason why it has been prohibited for human usage is mentioned in the Quran because it intoxicates and you lose your senses. The liquor which the Holy Quran promises you in the life to come is mentioned with this specific condition, that it will not intoxicate you. Where is the contradiction? Can you find one?
For myself, I don't find it.
Thank you. Yes. Next, please.
So I can do.
लाहौल के अलावा भी है.
Okay, so I can do. Recently, we had in England the European Football Championships.
What?
The European Football Championships
Yes,
in
yes.
England. And a couple of days ago, the Olympics began in America.
Yes.
Now, how useful are these as instruments which may bring humanity together in terms of sport? And
Ghanaians are good football players. I am Ghanaian family. Huh? Right?
yeah, we used to do.
But to be able to influence the limited world of football alone, you have to rise to such heights for which you have to wait maybe 50 years or so. So instead of wasting your energy on that, why don't you start doing direct tabligh? You see?
Okay.
If you are interested in football, do it to footballers. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
So I have a question about obviously I'm a father of a 3-year-old boy, and inshallah my wife's going to have another baby in November.
MashaAllah.
So, by the grace of God. So anyway, I'm thinking about the next 5 to 10 years.
We can write a calendar with reference to your babies.
That's right, yeah, somewhere along there. So
I like that very much. Huh?
okay, so what I'm thinking about is education, because it seems like in the 1970s and the 1980s, within education in the UK and around Europe, I think, it became very for children not to be given competitive sports and for the boys and girls to do similar things, you know, modern education things. And now there seems to be this get back to, you know, rote learning, you know, 2 times 2 is 2, 3 times 2 is... You know, what is the right, you know, what can we gain from the Quran to teach our children about is competitive sports valuable and, you know, rote learning? You can't beat learning into someone.
Your question with reference to mathematics.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
And mathematics with reference to computers is a completely different story altogether.
Yeah.
It is not the training of the mind on real direct mathematics. And the loss of human mind with the direct access to mathematics, mentally working and calculating, has created many dangers. For instance, computers sometimes fail. You see, it is the saying that
Junk in, junk out.
dictatorship corrupts, and absolute dictatorship corrupts absolutely. This applies to computers as well.
There's a quote from classic computer quote was junk in, junk out. If you put rubbish in, you'll get rubbish out.
Right, yes. No, but even if you do not put rubbish in, the computers have a way to get some rubbish, like you know, there was this for computer viruses, you know, imagine.
Yeah.
And the enemies can do that. The fraudulent people can defeat computers without being detected by the computer.
Right.
Because the computer has no independent brain. This is what I have been trying to draw the attention of the world to, that you think that computer is a brain superman for something for you. It's absolutely wrong. The maximum of human mental achievements are the limitations of the computers. Only you convert your time spent on programming into the time saved in the final calculations. That is the equation. But if you are corrupt mentally yourself, you can play havoc with this system. Like some scientists have already done it. Some scientists of high renown in America who were almost marked for Nobel prizes were discovered to have cheated the world through computers. So goodness versus evil remains the same constant war. If you add computers to this, then the dimension of this war will reach astronomical proportions, and the damage done will be so big that time may come when the people will repent they were ever introduced to computers. Even such damages can be done at the level of atomic warfare, and some scientists have really expressed their concern about computer accidents, which, if they take place, will be impossible to be detected in the right time, at the right time. They will trigger off things which will go beyond your control. So mathematics must always be directly related to human mind. And when you train your mind in mathematics, whatever the computations are, you realize, you know, you can identify that this couldn't be right. And then you challenge the facts. Nobody is doing it nowadays. We have been trained right from our childhood with the elementary mathematics. Although I was a very poor student, but I knew the philosophy of mathematics, so it has helped me a lot during my appointments, even in some industry where it was Jamaat's concern, which I was appointed to take care of. And I always judge results by scanning the presented facts through that internal computerized system of the brain, not an external computer. You see? I said, no, it's wrong. And they said, no, we have done it, on calculators. And this. So whatever it is, I know it is wrong, and it always turned out to be wrong. So the computer, our mind, has that capability of working the mathematical figures at a fantastic speed in a manner that it reaches the result, the ultimate inference, without you ever realizing that it has gone through all the computations required. You only think it's an intuitive thing. It is not intuition. It is the subconscious computation which goes at a fantastic speed, which comes out as a message to you, beware, there is something wrong. We warn you. Now, the computer doesn't do it to computers, to itself. You see, that's a problem. And mind always is the master of brain. And there is no master of computer but man. Again, this is wrong. My concept is, and my belief on this I am also writing, that human brain is not the ultimate decision maker. It is the mind which is the decision maker. It is the mind which computes, and the human brain is just a computer.
Right.
See? Now, it's a longer discussion, but some scientists of the level of Nobel laureate agree with me. I can quote them. They have also discovered the same truth, that it's impossible to consider brain, the material brain, to be the end all of a human entity. There is some invisible entity, indescribable entity in man which lies above the entity of brain. And this is what they call mind and we call soul.
Right.
The Holy Quran also refers to it as the ultimate of man. Fuad is also one term applied to this. And qalb also sometimes, heart is also mentioned to be that seat of the ultimate decision maker. But it is not a material decision maker, it is a spiritual decision maker which have the command of the whole mind. So when it leaves the body, the brain becomes a vegetation, no more. It can't do anything. You may sustain its life through machines, but you can't prevent it from dying. What is that ultimate source of life? That is not from brain to mind, it is from mind to brain.
Right.
When that tie is severed, the brain becomes dead, something of no use. There is no operator left, and you can't operate a brain from outside, only in a limited way occasionally. So this is the dilemma of the modern world. I have gone too far into the intricacies of these things, but
it was a better question.
Yes.
You answered than I posed.
Exactly. So it is, in fact, we must return to the basics of mathematics. We must train ourselves mentally for judging and comprehending the very basics of mathematics, because the Holy Quran emphasizes the role of mathematics so much that at one place it says, we created the moon and the earth and we set them in motion and the heavenly bodies so that we teach you mathematics. Mathematics cannot be taught or conceived by man without reference to the heavenly bodies. This is again a simple fact, but so often forgotten. All the great civilizations of the past which excelled in any area of mathematics, did it with reference to the heavenly bodies. Go to the Mayas, go to the Egyptian, civilization of the times of pharaohs, and the pyramids they built, they always indicating in the direction of some heavenly movements, and the formulas, as I have also myself seen in Maya remains in South America or Central America. They were very complicated mathematical figures, but mathematical related to the heavenly bodies. So what a beautiful book the Holy Quran is, in simple statements which people many times never take notice of. They read it as something for granted. But the Quran should not be taken as for granted. Very profound truths mentioned in these simple verses. We created the heavenly bodies so that we could teach you mathematics. That mathematics is being taught to the computer but not to the brain anymore. That's the last final answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
My second question also is what is the difference between the Islamic democracy as practiced by the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his Khulafas against the present day democracy as being practiced by the Western countries?
The definition of democracy must be kept in view clearly before we answer this question. It's a government for the people, of the people, by the people. Right?
Yes.
That's what the Americans say.
But if the very first ingredient is missing, the first condition, for the people, then where is democracy?
No more.
Huh?
It collapses.
Collapses. So the Holy Quran approaches this problem from a completely different vantage point. It says it addresses the governments by whatever means they have come to power, whether they are dictatorial or communist regime based on totalitarian philosophies, fascism and things. I was thinking of fascism, but communism also belongs to the same category, so I was searching for the right word. The totalitarian regimes, they are also a form of dictatorship, or capitalist regimes. Whatever the nature be, if they are bound to dispense all affairs with justice, then man should not be concerned whether they are representative or not. If a government is bound to dispense things with justice, what else do you want? This becomes your government.
Yes.
They become your people. So this is the beauty of the Quran. It deals with the issue of government making with just one observation. وَإِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ أَن تَحْكُمُوا بِالْعَدْلِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ. It is and Allah enjoins you, orders you. It's a longer verse, but the end part is that whenever you have the command of the government, you must dispense all the governmental affairs with absolute justice. And no enmity of the people who have opposed you should stand in the way of your dispensation of justice and their rights. So parties disappear. Whoever supported you becomes an irrelevant thing. Whoever opposed you becomes irrelevant. You dispense things with absolute justice, and an ideal democracy would be in operation. Remove this, and no democracy can be described as democracy in the real sense. This is the dilemma of the whole world. There is no democracy, not even here, unfortunately, because the party interests many a time clash with the national interests. The individual interests many a time clash with the national interests or party interests, and decision making is never done absolutely with absolute justice. That is why some conservative members have resigned from the post. They said, we do not see eye to eye with the government in relation to these policies. This is not what we should do to Britain, to the people of Britain. By overmuch shifting over to certain, for instance, economic market of the, European economic community and their pressures, some members believe genuinely that we are sacrificing the real interest of the people as such. And in other issues where the people were not taken into confidence by some government decisions, when the matter was given full air by the press, I know a member, conscientious member of the government, conservative government, resigned. He said, I don't care what happens to me, but I know that you have wronged and you have failed in your duty to be honest to the people. So this is a rare phenomenon, a rare incident of rare, and I should say more than rare. Okay, happens very, very seldom, not even once in a blue moon, During my stay of 12 years, I have seen this just one incident.
Which member was this?
A conservative, about 2 months ago, or 3 maybe, a conservative member of the government resigned on the issue of supplying information regarding the government's contact with Iraq.
Right.
You see, the government was ultimately found in fact involved in such decision making which was kept from the knowledge of the public and the House itself. Now the judge, the single man, it was a single judge or a board, I think it was a single judge, single man. He was very cautious in declaring the decision because he had to remain within his own jurisdiction, and he did not want to overstep his jurisdiction and go into the matter, the merit of the case as such. So he said, it could be this, it could be that, that sort of. So at all the difficult points, he bypassed the issues in a very cleverly worded decision. And the people understood the message, of course. They took it as a challenge. There were discussions on television. So on these issues, one of the conscientious members of the government said that it's all clear, the game is out. You have been criminally hiding facts from the people and the parliament, so I resign. See, this happens very rarely. So still, there's some torchbearers of truth. Okay.
Seems to be 1 down, 380 to go then.
So you are a Labour supporter.
I think the problem is with politics is it's politics by compromise. You can't, you can, so you can't.
That
say,
is the problem.
You can say, I'll have a bit of Labour, I'll have a bit of Conservative. You can't do that. You've got to say, I'm blue or I'm red.
You can
or I'm
only
orange.
do that if you believe in Islam.
See, that's the thing.
So Islam cannot permit you to identify entirely with any concept of politics.
Yeah.
Because there are many decision making times for you to make decisions when either you have to be loyal to the party to which you belong or loyal to the principles of honesty and truth.
Right.
So because it is not possible to maintain both in politics, so
who do you vote
practically
for?
you can't do it.
You can't vote for anyone.
Yes, that's right.
But should we vote? We must vote. Should we use our vote?
You must vote according to the best available choices.
Right.
Your vote would not mean that you support entirely with the policy of a party whose representative you are voting for, nor that he is absolutely good.
Least worst.
Yes. Least worst. I like this newly coined phrase.
Oh, it's finished.
Least worst. Shakespeare could do that. He used to coin such phrases. That was
The other one
the
is the
command
best.
of his language.
The other one is the best of a bad lot. They're all a bad lot.
That is the common one.
That's the one.
But the new one you have made is the least worst.
Same problem is
Yeah.
They are the same problems in South Africa,
Same.
unfortunately.
Very much. We don't
Yes.
have to Hussein, my question is, what is different between religion and culture? Is culture stronger than religion? We also have this problem in South Africa.
On this again, I have spoken so many times. Don't you have a dish antenna which can receive MTA
Yes, we are
in South-
receiving it very clear, alhamdulillah.
very clearly?
Now
Now.
we are receiving
Now.
it very clear,
You see?
alhamdulillah. But
Alhamdulillah.
before we had many problems.
Yes.
Many problems.
And now you should meet me daily,
Yes,
because I appear on television daily, and your questions will be answered. This I have repeatedly answered this question.
Okay.
The difference between social requirements and religious requirements, and when they clash, what should you should do? And if they do not clash in many areas, naturally you can continue to adhere to your social system. Why should you abandon it? Right? So the only way you can bring about universality in Muslim behavior is this: by rejecting a culture only when it directly contradicts Islamic values,
Okay.
when it opposes the Islamic injunctions. Only that much should be left out. So that will be an equally applicable principle to the whole world. No nationalism can be born out of this, because the same will be applied to Nigeria, to other countries of Africa, to England, to Germany. Only we're not against your culture. We're only against such culture which is against you. You see? Because the ultimate interest of man lies in the Islamic teachings. They are for the people. Again there, this is the word for which is emphasized. So you can say, we reject this part of culture because it's against you. And once I took this line in relation to answers to some visitors here, or perhaps it was in Germany, and I told them, look, we don't permit our girls to unveil themselves in a society like yours, because it is against their interest. It's against your interest to continue to object against that. And it is in your interest to follow our example. So it's not a question of Islam versus Western society, Islam versus culture. It is a question of interest. You should be able to prove that we are adhering to certain values because they lie in our interest, because they lie in the interest of those who are opposing them. And the questioner was completely disarmed.
Absolutely.
The questioner knew that I was talking sense, So, is it, no, I mean, yes, 1 minute to go. I think it should be more than 1 minute. They've eaten up 2 minutes. This is the problem of the computer age. You used to calculators and things. You couldn't make mental calculation. Come on. Next, please. Tanzania.
Yes. Your Holiness, I'm asking the one question, which is the second question, which is very common in my country, that when a child is born, Islam says that the born child should be formed an akika.
Africa.
Akika. But in our country, other Muslim non-Ahmadis, when the child was no hakika, but when the child dies, then
Then they have hakika.
They make hakika.
Sorry, excuse me.
Unbelievable. So this is that cultural part which is in direct confrontation with Islamic injunctions. Leave that. There is no choice for you. Islam says, do it at birth, and you say, do it at death. So there is a direct confrontation, a contradiction which cannot be resolved except by rejecting one and accepting the other.
An additional one is that when a child is done immediately, adhan is mentioned to have writing here and Ikama on the left here. I would like to know what is its significance and purpose.
The azan is set in the right ear,
Yes.
the Iqama in the left. What is the significance of that?
The significance, there are many significances. Number one, that if you think that the child is incapable of receiving influences at this stage, you are wrong. The human mind is a fantastic thing. The moment the child is born, and the scientists say now that even before the birth of a child, he can hear, he can respond to noises, to goodness, to love, to hatred, and it influences his making. So when he comes, the first thing he should hear is the name of God and the declaration that you are created for the sake of worship of God. That declaration is done when you say azan in the right ear. And in the left ear is the message that you just now you are not ready. But when the Iqama would take place, then remember that then you must come forward, take actual real participation. So the message of the left ear is you will be called when Iqama is done for you, for your age. But the general call to God is issued even at the earliest age, without having regard to the giving, without considering the factors of his infancy, without considering the factors that the language you are speaking is not known to him. But whatever he hears is imprinted. Later on, when he hears this, deep inside there is a buried memory which sings the same tune. Yes, this is the most beautiful thing I have heard, during my childhood. So it has some significance. It's not just useless. Now I think the time is over, and more than a little more than over. Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.